All right, it's time to discuss a few things about this case. Joining me now in studio, WBAP radio talk show host Ben Ferguson, also of the Fox 4, and Cory Session, policy director for the Innocence Project of Texas, who cleared the name of his brother Tim Cole, who was wrongfully convicted and died in prison. I'm going to set this up the exact way it happened, as far as I think it happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Mr. Session, you know Ben Ferguson. I've listened to his radio program. You were listening to him today. Maybe didn't agree with all of the things he said. You know he's a contributor to Fox 4. You called Fox 4 and says, I want to debate Ben Ferguson. So you're here. Tell me what some of the things were you had a problem with.
Well, that we shifted the blame. I actually spoke to Ben yesterday morning about on air. He shifted the blame a little bit to the young man who videoed. It seemed like you were trying to kill the messenger. He was just an innocent person, as he said. I was invisible.
I think that's the part that people are missing here. You have a young man that openly admits that he was there trespassing. He was told by a security guard to leave. Asked the security guard, asked him, where's your pass? You're only supposed to have 2 passes if you're a resident to get into the pool with guests. They didn't have a pass. They went around the security guard. He even said the security guard asked him to leave. So my point is this. There are kids that have no respect for authority. He is a white young man, has nothing to do with race. And a lot of this could have been avoided if you actually would have had kids that would have listened to authority, not broken into a pool, not trespassed, and had respect for adults. And we have a total lack of respect for adults in the community nowadays by a lot of youth, including the 15-year-old that was shooting the video.
That young man, we wouldn't have this police officer, thankfully, retired. I thought initially that he needed to be reprimanded, reassigned, retrained, but I'm glad he's retired. But unfortunately, officers like this, sometimes as young as he is, will probably be rehired in some other area.
Yeah, he has that opportunity. I want to transition. Do you have a problem with a lot of people saying the kids were out of control and needed to have more respect for authority? Because we're hearing a lot of different comments on that particular subject. What do you
Absolutely.
think?
Children need to have more respect for authority. But in the initial video, you see those children, one officer talking to them very calmly, like an officer should, getting their attention and telling them, hey, when the cops come, don't run. And that's the proper thing. Turn around, sit down, and be quiet.
So you guys agree on that.
And I agree on that. I'm glad the officer resigned. But there are 2 different issues here. There is the issue of what happened to get the cops called, which was you had children whose parents, first of all, I want to know where they are, why you're having this massive party, and when there's a person who is in charge of that community, a private community, there were a lot of kids that broke the rules by going into there and were asked politely to leave, to the point where it got to a fight, to the point where you had to call the cops. A lot of this could have been avoided, and the cops never would have been involved. And when you have a 15-year-old that's sitting there saying, I know I'm trespassing, I know I wasn't supposed to be there, and we turn him into some sort of hero because he shot a video, I have a problem with that.
I'm not calling him a hero by any means. He had every right to be there to film what he did.
Okay, but he didn't have a right to be at the party when they was asked to leave by a security officer. And that's my big issue, is there's a lot of young people that have no respect for authority any longer.
At that point, he was not at the swimming pool when he was videotaping this. None of this wouldn't have been to this point and exposed this officer for what he is and what he allowed himself to escalate into if it hadn't been for this young man.
I think you're doing what people probably would. You're forgiving him of his sin for the greater, what you saw as a greater good he did by getting this story out. Let me ask you about something else. And you saw a bit of this before we got into this interview. Something happened today that I thought was important. You remember the woman who was fighting, the blonde woman pulling the hair of the African-American woman. And she is also the one who's accused of yelling, go back to your Section 8 housing. That has been a very inflammatory statement tossed around. We go to her house today. Blonde white woman, knock on the door, and who answers the door? Her African-American roommate. And he says, she's not a racist. What are you talking about? Sometimes the engines get fired up here. Suburb, white people, black people.
Fits the narrative.
It fits the narrative. Did that thing get fired up too soon in this case, you think?
Absolutely. But unfortunately, sometimes people, when they get in the heat of the moment, they go for the jugular. And they say things that they wish, I wish I hadn't said that. But it's too late. And sometimes those inner deep feelings that you know is going to hurt that person, you end up saying those things. And unfortunately, I'd like to see all of them.
Or it may not have happened. And I think we don't give people the benefit of the doubt enough. You were shocked, people were shocked when they go to the house and they find an African-American man living with a white woman who everyone said, she's a racist. Does it sound like someone who's a racist that has a roommate for 8 years of literally the person that you're saying that she must hate? There could be a chance, and this is my big observation of this, there could be a chance that maybe there are people that know what to say to get the coverage the way they want it, or they tell their story in a way that they think will nail somebody to the wall.
Absolutely, that's going to happen.
Yeah, and we had a guy, Bennett Embry, who's been on everywhere I saw him on Fox News and CNN, a guy in the community, African-American guy.
He was there.
He was there and said, hey, you didn't see it all, the kids were out of control. And he's been called an Uncle Tom, people trying to get him fired. I do get tired of the, you post something on Facebook and you need to be fired for it, depending on, I guess sometimes it's legit, but sometimes it's crazy. All right, so I want to ask you something about, I guess, what happened today. First of all, Casebolt resigned. You both said you're happy.
Great, it's brilliant, it's good, it's the right thing, and for the department, it's going to make the community, trust them that much more.
How do you respond to his actions? A lot of people saying you got rid of the only good cop on the scene. He was doing right, and the chief's an idiot.
Then the other 11 cops were the bad cops. There's the issue. He overreacted. He escalated himself, and I think when he tripped and fell, that just re-energized him he lost it. And unfortunately, in that position as a public servant, you don't get to lose it and still pull your gun out on someone. We'd be talking a different story if that gun had went off.
It is interesting, the police supporters who say they're the police supporters are not supporting the chief, and I don't know where you're
well,
doing that.
I think anytime
pressure, but I don't know.
I think anytime you have a police department that's put in this situation, you have to do what's best for the community, and you look at this and you say, was this guy able to keep his cool in this situation? The answer is no. Compared to the other cops, he was not able to keep his cool. And I think that concerned people. And if you have a child out there, regardless of the color of their skin, I really don't think this had to do with race as much as people have acted like. I think you had a situation where you had a lot of kids that were out of control. The 15-year-old that shot the video said it was crazy. Before the cops even got there, it was out of control. Those are his words, not mine. When you have police that are thrown in those situations, you still have to be able to keep your cool. He could not, and I think it's the right thing to resign.
Especially, I've talked to a lot of police. I know a lot of police officers. They say that firm, aggressive, loud, even cursing stance is great when you got 5 cops and 5 people and you need to get control.
Sure.
When you have 200 people and you have a small number of police, you need to bring it down. That's what all of them are saying. You need to bring it down, not escalate it. All right, so the chief threw him under the bus, seriously, today.
Yeah, he did.
Said he was out of control. When he got there, continued to be out of control. It was indefensible, his behavior. Is that what you do? Is that what you do when you're a police chief? You talk straight?
I think that's where we needed to be decades ago. The police chiefs need to talk straight and be upfront and honest and admit what's clear and what everyone can see. He was out of control. He lost it. He lost it.
And here's the thing: police are on notice. Police are on notice. I mean, my dad's in law enforcement. Full disclosure.
Okay.
There's one thing that he now knows, and everyone he works with. You might as well assume every time you're out in public, someone is filming you from some angle, and you are on notice. You have to play by a higher standard, and they should be playing by a higher standard. At the same time, it doesn't mean that we don't allow cops to do their job. And if you have 2 guys running up behind you in a situation, you have to understand from the perspective of that police officer, you might have actually been afraid for your life. Because if I'm looking on the ground, I have 2 grown young adults coming up behind me, I'm not going to feel good about myself in that situation. I wasn't as troubled by him pulling the gun because in the split second you see it, did it look like 2 men are running at you? The answer is yes.
Full disclosure, their mother is also a police officer, and she's watched the video. I'm not going to say what she said, but it's obvious that, he needed to be retrained.
So let me ask you: does his resignation end it? Are we done? Should we be talking about this? Are there going to be protests? Did the protests go away now? You said it was one officer. That one officer has resigned. So is it over?
I don't think it should be over. I would hope that
How does it go forward?
I would hope that the members of that community, all those people that were there protesting, you actually go and meet with the city council, the members of the city council, members in the community, and come together and come into a room and talk about, hey, this happened. You got to tone it down some.
I think we're talking about it plenty. I think it's time to move on. I think they took decisive action. You have a police officer that no longer is a police officer. You have the people that were arrested that are no longer going to be held for those charges that were against them. I think they got it right. I think we should applaud everyone involved, how quickly we got resolved, and let's move on with life.
But the emotions still exist, and those still have to be addressed.
Okay, we'll end it there. Texas Innocence Project, Texas, Cory Session. WBAP's Ben Ferguson. Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.